Hello there. Welcome to my channel. Jed Wallace, the crisis PR hired gun, is suing Blake Lively for $7 million. You could not make this up. So we have here he's already onto his first amended complaint, which was filed in the state of Texas, Austin Division, on the 25th of April 2025. We're going to read through the document and just do a little bit of debunking, a little bit of analysis, because I've looked into Jed Wallace as much as I can. I do have some other videos on this topic if this is your first time here. To the Honourable Court, Jed Wallace and Street Relations bring this action against Blake Lively for defamation as follows. 1. Introduction. Jed Wallace works from home in the Texas Hill County for Street, a small Texas company he founded and owns. Wallace was described by one of Lively's attorneys as living in the shadows, with no online presence and no public profiles. That ended on the Friday before Christmas, December 20th, 2024, when his privacy was shattered, to be replaced by the harsh and, in this case, false, defamatory and undeserved glare of the Hollywood spotlight, involving two of the industry's biggest names, Lively and Justin Baldoni. And the movie they starred in, It Ends With Us. On that day and before, Lively provided the press with her 3-page form employment complaint filed with the California Civil Rights Division CRD complaint, naming Wallace and Street as respondents and alleging they had sexually harassed Lively and then retaliated when she reported the harassment. And a 62-page, 203 numbered paragraph draft complaint purportedly attached to the CRD complaint, listing Wallace and Street as defendants, regarding 10 claims ranging from sexual harassment to breach of contract, and asserting that the harassment had taken place on the set of the movie and the retaliation occurred in the days leading up to the film's release. Wallace and Street were never on the set of the film or otherwise involved in its production, and their limited and sole involvement in gouging public reaction to the film and its stars occurred after the film's release, not in the days leading up to it. So he does admit that he was involved in the aftermath. The filings with the California agency are not available online and only available to the public. Pursuant to a written request for public information, and yet that night at 8:48 p.m, the day the CRD and draft complaint were filed, a reporter sent Wallace an urgent page-and-a-half email which stated that she had learned that Miss Lively filed a legal complaint against you alleging sexual harassment, retaliation, ... among other claims. She described details from the draft complaint, including that the complaint includes extensive private text messages and emails, which include exchanges involving you. She added that court records show that your clients have included Paramount Pictures, an obscure fact not easily uncovered. Let me stop there for 1 second. So he literally says it in the first instance that Wallace was described by one of Lively's attorneys as living in the shadows with no online presence. And bear in mind this is a lawsuit for defamation. Literally 2 points later, he's saying that court records show that your clients have included paramount pictures, an obscure fact not easily uncovered. So why would you say that if you had a transparent online presence? I know for a fact that there is a video that details your involvement in the Paramount Pictures lawsuit with Bam Margera. I had seen it myself. And you haven't managed to delete it. So that's still out there. If you're a journalist, that's what you do. You look out for these things, Jed. But yeah, let's carry on. The reporter demanded that we need to hear back from you by tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. The reporter's newspaper posted the draft complaint, which was only a draft and never filed in any court, on its website under the banner, "Read the complaint." The document remains on the website today. Lively provided all of this information to the reporter and her newspaper. Yeah, we know that there was an article published in the New York Times on around the 20th of December, which had a lot of juicy information concerning how PR companies, and in particular crisis PR companies, work, how they've been manipulating online narratives and allegedly employing people like Jed Wallace. But now Jed Wallace, because his name was all over it, as this reporter has noted, and she's already found that he was involved in a previous lawsuit with another very big production company or film studio, he's a bit upset. That Saturday, December 21st, 2024, media including the New York Times, the Hollywood Reporter, TMZ, E! News, Variety, Today, CNN, People magazine, which named Wallace, Fox News, and USA Today all reported on the CRD complaint or the draft complaint, giving prominence to Lively's allegation. The next day, additional media, including at least 3 outlets in Texas, reported on the complaints. The CRD and draft complaints, or the contents thereof, had been shared by Lively with multiple media, although she granted one newspaper exclusive access to thousands of pages of text messages and other documents, which were reviewed by the newspaper, as noted in a lengthy article published within hours of the CRD and draft complaints filings under the headline, "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine." Then, on New Year's Eve 2024, the draft complaint, which had by this time grown into a 93-page, 327-numbered paragraph document, the real complaint, was filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District State of New York. But the real complaint, unlike the CRD and the draft complaints, did not include Wallace or Street as defendants on respondents. That's in bold. The reason for this omission was certainly known to Lively. There was and is no evidence to support the defamatory statements of and concerning Wallace or Street made in either the CRD or draft complaints or the press reports republishing this defamatory allegations. They had nothing to do with the production or marketing of the film. We're gonna discuss. In reality, they had everything to do with the marketing of the film, because regardless of what was said in those messages, the activity that was going on online in regard to negative stories about Blake Lively is what made people take an interest in that film. This lack of proof explains why 3 weeks later, Lively sued Wallace in Texas state court to obtain potential evidence of Wallace's alleged involvement in the matter, even retaining one of Wallace's former lawyers, who had represented him in a matter involving Paramount Pictures, to prosecute the Texas lawsuit against him, to defend his case and serve as co-counsel with Lively's 5 other lawyers in the New York case. That lawyer filed a lawsuit against Wallace in Hays County, Texas, seeking to take his deposition. Lively represented to the judge under oath that she needed the discovery to understand and evaluate potential claims, so that any suit filed by Lively against Wallace is supported by competent witness testimony and evidence, and swearing that without this evidence, any lawsuit against Wallace would be groundless and in bad faith, or for harassment or improper purpose, under Texas Civil Practice and Rem Code 9.011 as prohibited by Texas Civ P13, Texas lawsuit. In other words, she sought from a Texas judge in Texas evidence from a Texan to support her false claims in the CRD and draft complaints targeting as to Wallace and Street, Texas residents. Let's pause for 1 second. So first of all, we've got that he was living in the shadows, but then no one knew about his previous lawsuit with Paramount Pictures that he was named in. So that was a lawsuit where Bam Margera was dismissed from a movie that he was part of because he failed a drugs test, where Jed Wallace was in charge of his well-being program. And Bam Margera accused Jed Wallace in these documents, in this lawsuit, of not being honest, of not being qualified to be in charge of his well-being and overseeing his medications. And basically, the well-being program failed because Bam Margera was not sober after entering into this well-being program. So Jed Wallace, his lawyer in that, has apparently been approached by or engaged by Blake Lively, and that's mentioned here. That's interesting because Brian Friedman, who's representing Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer, previously had sued Justin Baldoni on behalf of another client. So I don't really get what that's all about. Maybe it's some like lawyer pettiness. But speaking of lawyers, I did want to mention that Jed Wallace's lawyer is a man called Charles L. Babcock. Now, also, as well as filing this lawsuit of defamation against Blake Lively, well, I think he's literally picking on the wrong person, but we will get into that. Yeah, Jed Wallace has been trying to dismiss Blake Lively's lawsuit against him. He's filed a motion to dismiss, and one of the reasons he used was that he's just a poor guy and he doesn't have the money to represent himself. But yet his attorney is a man called Charles L. Babcock, who is an American attorney with the Texas-based law firm Jackson Walker LLP, and he is best known for serving as lead litigator for Oprah Winfrey in several cases, including a 1998 lawsuit regarding an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show about mad cow disease. You couldn't make it up, could you? But I'm sure that Charles charges quite a bit. So I'm sure there's cheaper lawyers out there. I mean, I'm not saying Jed doesn't deserve the best, but, you know, it doesn't really match with his excuse that he can't afford to be sued. The Texas lawsuit was done purposely, and Lively paid a fee to the Hays County clerk to avail herself of the privilege of conducting activity in the Texas court system, and she listed 10 lawyers from 3 law firms as her representative contacts for the case. The Texas lawsuit related directly to a claim or defense in this lawsuit that is truth or falsify and fault. As we shall see, Lively purposely turned away from her self-styled investigation into the truth, which is productive of both negligence and actual malice. I just don't get the argument. Like, from the get-go, okay, let's be straight. Let's be absolutely straight. For the people at the back, Blake Lively was in a film, directed, produced, and starred in, her co-star, by Justin Baldoni. Okay. She was definitely a way bigger star than him. She was going to carry the movie. She then experiences sexual harassment on the set, not just from him, but other people in the crew. In fact, there was just a general atmosphere of it. And it wasn't just her that was happening to. There were other female members in the crew that was happening to. And now the law allows you to speak up against this kind of thing happening. We all know that misogyny is rampant in the world, in the movie industry, in business. So she spoke up. She done the right thing. Everything that Jed has described has been official procedure. She hasn't done anything underhand. So Blake Lively has filed this complaint about sexual harassment in the workplace. Okay, there is now a law to stop retaliatory activity going on, to shut her down. But yet, that is what she is now filing about, because she experienced retaliatory activity. We all saw it. We all saw what happened. And Jed seems to be contesting it. He's saying, well, it's nothing to do with me, but his name is all over it, okay? And if you ask me, he's literally going after the wrong person, because she was within her rights to complain that this was going on. We have seen messages from Justin Baldoni saying he wanted to be shown in a good light compared to her by using examples of previous situations where a female celebrity had been taken down on social media. How is that not retaliatory? Then we have a quote from Steve Sarowitz, one of the partners at Wayfarer, saying he would pay whatever it costs to bring down her and her family. I'm not sure exactly where that quote came from, but that was in the article. Now, how is that Blake Lively's fault? It's just not her fault that Wayfarer had employed a PR firm, or they were a client of one of the most powerful PR firms, Stephanie Jones, one of the big Hollywood players, and someone who worked there managing Justin's account, Jennifer Abel, decided to be a little snake and sideline her way out of it to join Melissa Nathan in a new PR firm she had set up. And the reason why all these messages came to light mentioning Jed's name which fully implicate him in this retaliatory activity. I hope I'm making sense here. Is because Jennifer had to give her phone in. She was using a work phone, she was using a work email to plot her way and take their client to a new company. And everyone knows that is protected in the law. So she would have known full well that she would have had to show all of her correspondence there. Either way, if you are using a company phone and email address, they have access to that. She wasn't the owner of that business. So if anyone needs to be sued, maybe it's her. And on top of it all, Wayfarer, this is why this has all turned into a huge legal mess. Wayfarer had a contract with Stephanie Jones, which they wanted to breach to go and work with Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel under a different company. So Stephanie Jones was going to react to that. She was not going to just let her client go without doing what she has done. It's not really that difficult to figure it out. There's so many distracting stories going on about subpoenas and this, that, and let's not forget that Brian Friedman, Justin's lawyer or Wayfarer's lawyer, has done a public campaign already, which is carrying on the smear campaign against Blake Lively, which is part of the retaliatory action that she's describing. So this is about it's all about where the filings were put. It's not about what she did. Again, I'm no legal expert, although I do read a lot of court documents. You're suing for defamation. So that's if she's made a false claim. I mean, this is why you have court cases. You make allegations and then you go through the mess to see whether they're correct or not. And as regular members of the public that have no dogs in the fight, we can see clearly with our own eyes what has gone on here. Okay? She filed a complaint of sexual harassment. We've seen evidence of it. I've seen so much stuff that Baldoni has said out of his own mouth in the last over 10 to 15 years, showing what a misogynist, and talking about tone deaf. He is literally tone deaf with this whole idea that he's just this lovely guy that's just here to support women's rights and disabled people. It's fake AF. So, do I believe that there was misogyny going on in that film production? 100% I do. And I think she has every right to be doing what she is doing. We will see what comes out. But what's happened in the last few months, everything has been about supporting Baldoni and making her look bad, which is exactly what she has said. I have had it in my own comments on my own videos. You know, let's carry on. After this lawsuit on February 4th, 2025, and after she sued Wallace and Street February 18th, 2025 in New York, amended New York lawsuit, Lively, accompanied by her publicists Leslie Sloan and Jamie Candell, appeared at SXSW in Austin, Texas, where, on information and belief, she made additional false and defamatory remarks of and concerning the plaintiffs. Okay, this bit I do not know nothing about. Specifically, when confronted by a Texas resident who stated that Blake lies and referenced justice for Justin. Lively never admitted that her statements were false, but rather allowed her lies to stand, thus defaming plaintiffs by, at the very best, implication. So what about the lies about her? On information and belief, while in Austin, Lively made additional defamatory remarks concerning plaintiffs, discovery will reveal the extent of those statements. But you see, this is what I don't get, because you're saying you need to have discovery to see whether what you've heard is true, and she is doing the exact same thing, and you've got a problem with it. Make it make sense. During her stay in Texas, Lively also travelled to Waco to visit Chip and Joanna Gaines's hotel. And while they were engaged in a confrontation with a young girl who was attempting to take Lively's photograph, on information and belief, Lively made additional defamatory comments about plaintiffs purposely availing herself of the Texas forum. Discovery will reveal the extent of those remarks. Again, I am not familiar with this story. I think it's a distraction from the original issue, which was the sexual harassment and the following retaliatory campaign. And whatever she said to a girl outside at a public event, which may or may not have happened, because you're saying on information and belief, I don't see how that defames you. Maybe I'm missing something. On February 5th, 2025, plaintiffs demanded that Lively retract, clarify, or correct defamatory statements made by her. On March 7th, 2025, Lively availed herself of her rights under a Texas law and demanded certain information from plaintiffs under the statute. Plaintiffs complied. As of this filing, Lively has neither retracted, clarified, nor corrected her defamatory statements, even though she knows that plaintiffs had nothing to do with the alleged sexual harassment, and further knows that she may avoid punitive damages for part of the claim if she were to retract, again availing herself of the protection afforded by Texas law. All conditions precedent to the filing of this suit have been satisfied by plaintiffs. Lively reasonably foresaw that her furious allegations would be republished by the media worldwide, and that this form of hell would be visited upon plaintiffs who, it should be noted, never did anything to earn her scorn. I think they did a lot. Like I said, the issue was with Wayfarer. They messed up. They didn't handle this. They made a whole mess of this. They thought they were going to get away with their behavior. They thought they were going to hire the biggest crisis PR company in the US, if not one of the in the world, who deals with like top level politicians. Who else? Drake, you know, these big superstar celebrities. I know she's worked with the Trump organization. And Lively has stood up to them. So that's why we're in this mess. And then on top of it, like I said, you know, they tried to snake another huge, big celebrity PR firm. So what did they think was going to happen? Honestly, none of this I see getting mentioned. Everything's just so personal and so sexist and so double standards. Wallace is a citizen of Texas and resides in Dripping Springs, which is within the Austin Division of the United States District Court for the Western District of Texas. Yeah, I've actually seen his property online. He owns a small company, Street, a crisis mitigation firm. You said it right there. A crisis mitigation firm. they're involved in crisis PR. There was a crisis. There was a crisis. But you're trying to act like she's so unreasonable. She's malicious. She's spiteful. Okay. Primarily helping families and individuals who find themselves unjustly attacked, extorted, doxed, swatted, scammed, or needing help navigating their most frightening situations. Oh yeah, another one of his clients, allegedly, I think he's been profiled in Business Insider, is Aidan Ross. Now, I don't know too much about Aidan Ross, but I know that he is not exactly someone that is being unjustly attacked, okay? He's done a lot of unpleasant stuff, and he's aligned himself with a lot of very unpleasant people, and he's got himself into a lot of trouble. So that comes with a consequence. And before you say, oh, Blake Lively, no, Aidan Ross is a mess. And I know he's got an addiction problem as well. And I know, well, I don't know, but I can assume that Jed was hired to take the heat off of him, because that's what crisis mitigation is. And you know why? It's so Aidan Ross can carry on making more money for these awful streaming companies like, what's it called? Kick and Twitch and whatever else it is. You know what I mean? It's not like he's doing anything purposeful with his life. That's all he does. Meanwhile, spreading a lot of prejudice and hate around. Oh, and also, you've worked with drug addiction facilities, doing PR for them. That is fact. That was on their website. From what I understand, it's doing brokering for addicts. You have a lot of experience working with addicts, working with vulnerable people, profiting off of those people. That's not helping. That's profiting. You're doing it for profit. What you do in your free time might be a different story, but this is what you do for a living. And all of these things, they carry a risk, because that's what happens in the corporate world with sensitive issues and cover-ups. There's a huge risk. And I'm pretty sure you knew all of this. You knew all of this. You know all this stuff about attacking, extorting, doxing, swatting. That is all stuff that happens on streaming platforms. It's not what you expect, like Hollywood movie stars like Blake Lively to be mixed up in. But here we are, apparently. Street is a Texas corporation, and since 2021, long before the defamation complained of here, maintained its principal place of business in Texas and is therefore a citizen of a state other than New York. Lively is an actress and entrepreneur and is a citizen of New York. I just don't understand. I'm not going to lie. I don't understand all of the jurisdictional things. But I don't think, this is just my personal opinion, that is anything personal to you, Jed. I think she was well within her rights to include you in the harassment complaint allegation, because you definitely were part of it. And I know you're going to start saying about the dates are wrong and all of this, but that doesn't, in my opinion, change anything. It Ends With Us premiered at the AMC Lincoln Square in New York on August 6th, 2024, although it was first shown weeks before in Texas at an event, Book Bonanza. Street was first approached on August 7th, 2024 by Tag PR, without assisting it in social digital mitigation and remediation regarding Wayfarer Studios. On August 8th, on August 9th, 2024, Street began work on the 3-month project. The 3-month project that we have seen detailed in an email between Abel and Nathan, where it said she could offer different packages, one being 150 grand for 3 months, another one being 100 grand a month or 75 grand a month. Why would she I know she wasn't employing you for that amount, but why would she be budgeting for that amount and then need you to monitor social media? Like, this is where it just doesn't make sense. You've just said you do digital mitigation and remediation. That means there's a problem there. That doesn't mean you're just monitoring and analyzing. That means you're a problem solver, a fixer. That's what it means to me and other people. On August 9th, 2024, Street began work on the 3-month project by monitoring social media regarding the movie and its 2 stars, but did not publish any information to third parties about the participants or anything else, but rather spotted trends about the public's reaction to the film and its stars, and subsequently provided advice to TAG and Wayfarer on those subjects. Now, this is another contended point, because although we saw plenty of messages which literally showed that you were being sent things to deal with, to shut down, one post in particular that was written by a woman whose friend had been on one of Justin Baldoni's TV shows, and she said that she was speaking out because although the woman who had been in the show wouldn't want to say anything bad, she saw her experience was how he came in, how he took advantage, how he said he was going to do all this stuff for her, and he portrayed her as a complete victim from an impoverished background, which was not true, and tried to raise money said she was raising money, he was raising money and all of this stuff, and basically just left her with nothing for his TV show. And that's called exploitation. Meanwhile, in the TV show, he presents himself as the big hero that's going around doing nothing but good things for people. Do you see the problem there? And then this post, which, it's so difficult to find any criticism of Justin Baldoni, given how much he has been involved in using homeless people for content, using disabled people for content, having a previous addiction to pornography, doing family channel stuff, all exploitative, but only one post negative gets sent to you to sort out, and we've seen an actual message of it, but you're saying you were just there to monitor. And also, if you were there to monitor, why is Melissa, I don't know if it was Jennifer, sent you the message? Like, she's the monitorer. She's doing the monitoring in that message. There's too many contradictions of what he's saying in this lawsuit compared to what we've seen in the actual evidence, because he's not contesting that any of those messages were fake. Anyway, so we've got what he was employed for, how much was being paid, what he said his role was versus what his role actually was. And then also he's said about he hasn't passed anything on to third parties. Well, there's another bit of information, which is that although all the text messages and emails we've seen that implicate him, there was actually a Signal group set up. And as everyone knows, Signal has disappearing messages. So there might be a lot of messages out there which are no longer in existence where you were doing God knows what. So, you know, it doesn't really prove your point. Oh, I've lost my place. I think this bit about would rather that his role was about spotting trends about the public's reaction is just cap. There's another thing as well that I saw. Okay, and this is all you talk about organic. This is organic. This is organic. Okay, there's another post that's written on a Substack blog where a guy said he'd written a post about it back in the summer that had gotten way more engagement than any of his other blog posts. And so he did some data research, some data analysis of his own, because other people can do that. It's very easy to do metadata analysis if you have the right tools, which is another reason why I don't believe that that is what you were hired for. He found out that all the engagement was coming from the same email address. That means that someone was doing some kind of digital manipulation to boost certain content. Does it not? Does it not? That doesn't mean that they were just sitting back analysing and not passing on to third parties. Plaintiffs had no involvement in the production of or marketing of the film and never interacted with Lively at any time. Lively, however, included plaintiffs in her sexual harassment retaliation CRD complaint and draft complaint and leaked those documents to the press and other third parties. Lively reasonably foresaw that her defamatory accusations against plaintiffs would be republished, and they were all over the world, including in Texas, causing damage to plaintiffs. But you were involved. You were involved. That's the problem. That is the problem I have with you saying it's defamation. It's not defamation. She was telling it how it is. You all have just tried to twist it. The CRD complaint alleged that Wallace and Street engaged in a variety of conduct in violation of California Government Code, Section 12940 and Title V11 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The CRD complaint went on to allege that Wallace's and Street's conduct includes sexual harassment, retaliation, failure to investigate, prevent and or remedy harassment, and aiding and abetting harassment and retaliation. I mean, to be fair, if your job was to monitor online trends, you must have seen the amount of harassment and of the sexual. It's nearly all related to sex. When I say sex, I mean gender related, gender biased, and harassment and retaliation. How can you say that is false? Like, any single post you read, even now, you know, and it's nearly coming up for a year, you still see it. You're still seeing it in comments, and it came from somewhere. It's not just because people hate Blake Lively that much. Because, like I said, it's not balanced. There's literally nothing. There's nothing about Baldoni and what a creep he is. It's almost like that's been wiped out. The CRD complaint also asked the reader to please see attached complaint for specific details. The CRD attachment was the draft complaint, which had many indica of a standalone legal complaint, see Exhibit 2. Indeed, some media later published the draft complaint under the headline, Read the Complaint. La-di-da-da-da-da-da-da. This is all about California law. I mean, do I need to read these out? The draft complaint named Wallace and Street as defendants and sought damages for sexual harassment under California and federal law, retaliation under California and federal law, failure to investigate, prevent and or remedy harassment under California law, retaliation under the California Labor Code, aiding and abetting harassment and retaliation under California law, breach of contract, international infliction of emotional distress, negligence, false light, invasion of privacy under the California Constitution, and interference with prospective economic advantage. Absolutely, all of those happened. Now, if your point is that it was happening in California and you're in Texas, then I don't know the legalities of that, but this happened all over the world, so I don't know how that works. I do not know how that works, but I still don't think it proves that you weren't involved and that you didn't do all of this stuff. And I've not even mentioned as well the quote, "We're crushing it on Reddit." That was from you, Jed, okay? You said we're crushing it on Reddit. That was a text message shown in her complaint. What were you crushing? You were crushing doing trend monitoring on Reddit? Like, what were you crushing? Crushing the upvotes on the threads about how awful Blake Lively is. I'm just saying, like, what were you crushing? This is the thing, like, there's nothing here that says she's misunderstood what my role was. This is what I was actually doing. You really want us to believe that you were hired as a smoking gun by a crisis PR firm that does mitigation, you know, that you specialize in mitigation, to just be like, everyone's wearing florals today. Everyone's talking about this today. You know, it's like, you don't even need to hire anyone for that, because it doesn't matter what social media platform you go on or you use. The big story of the day will be on there. It will be on TikTok. It will be on Twitter. It will be on Facebook. It will be on Instagram. It will be on YouTube. That's how it works. It's an ecosystem. Now, how some of these stories get amplified over others, that's what we're here for. That's what we want to know about. That's what she's talking about when she says there was a retaliation. Because up until 2024, there might have been a few niggles about Blake Lively. Like, I'm sure she's not a perfect person. No one is. But the levels of criticism that she's been subjected to over quite minor issues. I mean, I think the white privilege, I mean, let's not even get into Justin Baldoni and his white privilege and his faux pas every time he opens his mouth. But yeah, no one's saying that getting married on a plantation is a good thing. No one is saying that. But that's the reason why you want her brought down over anyone else in the world. Like, hold other people to the same standard then. What about Johnny Depp being paid to promote Dubai? You know, like, it's just crazy how disproportionate the level of criticism that's gone on about her, and the amount of content being made. People making hundreds of videos every day because they know it's going to do well, when there's really terrible perpetrators out there that should be getting way more attention than her. You know, that's what people want to know about. They're like, why is this stuff allowed to go on? What's going on? Why are we being manipulated? How is it done? Who's doing it? I think it is all really, really important that it is all revealed in the depositions. I do. That's why I've taken an interest. Critically, however, the draft complaint was missing several indispensable components, such as the name of the court, the cause number, the causes of action, the prayer for relief, including a statement of damages, and the signature block for Lively's lawyers, although they were listed on the first page as customary in California, but not New York, where the case minus the plaintiffs was ultimately filed over a week later. But surely these are legal issues that will be picked on by the judge if necessary. I don't know. I thought that was how it worked. Adding to the confusion, Lively used ambiguous group pleading by lumping plaintiffs into phrases like Wayfarer parties. Well, I've already said that. This is all down to Wayfarer. They was in the contract. They was the ones that messed up. And they were the ones that were trying to cover their tracks. And they were the ones that snaked their way out of one PR firm to work with another one, which caused all of these text messages to be released. And if they hadn't have been acting inappropriately in the first place with their employees, which there's been plenty of other allegations before Blake Lively, it's just no one heard about them because they weren't famous people. Do you see how it works? We only know about this because of her level of celebrity and because we all saw the takedown attempt, which is still going on. But you're here quibbling about what location it was filed in and whether she used Wayfarer parties or Wayfarer team, tag digital team, Baldoni Wayfarer team. I mean, deliberately, they didn't want all of that information to come to light because she said herself in a message to and then when I say she, Melissa said herself in a message to Jennifer, like, we can't say to him how we're doing this. You know, they knew what they was doing was underhand. So yeah, it's likely that there will be confusion over exactly what the relationships were, what the contracts were, what the fine tunings were, but left a reasonable reader with the impression that all causes of actions, severe allegations of sexual harassment, and violations of California and federal law are attributable to all defendants, including plaintiffs and or respondents. Well, I think I'm a reasonable reader. I do. And I'm going to tell you right here and now, I understand exactly what she's saying. I understand exactly what she's alleging. The names of the people who, other than Justin and Jamie, I think there are other crew members or cast members that were involved, that their names may have been redacted. But I know that it involves more than one person, and I know that it involves more than one incident. Okay, it was a general feeling that boundaries were not being respected when it came to male and female relationships on the set. And when I say male, I'm talking about the business owners, the producers, the wage payers that thought they could just come in and show videos of their partners naked and all of this other stuff that's being alleged. And you might think that's being over the top, but it has to start somewhere. Boundaries have to be acknowledged and respected in a professional working environment. That is the whole point of all of these civil laws that we're talking about, that she's using to file these complaints. So it's very clear that everyone's role in this activity was slightly different. I think this is a reach. Beyond listing the causes of action on the first page of the draft complaint, Lively makes several specific statements about plaintiffs. First, in paragraph 18, Lively specifically states that plaintiffs are a Texas-based contractor who weaponized a digital army around the country to create, seed, and promote content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums. A full statement other than a Texas-based contractor. Again, didn't you say we're crushing it on Reddit? That's an internet-based chat forum. That's where so many online rumors that come over to YouTube, that come over to TikTok, Reddit subthreads, is that what they're called? And it was also mentioned in another message where they said the social combat plan is going to involve Reddit and TikTok using accounts that cannot be traced. So for you to sit there and say that you had no role in that when there's not anyone else employed that was doing that, is there? Was there another person that was doing that and then you were just there doing the monitoring? Like, we weren't born yesterday. You're not making yourself look redeemed of these allegations. You really are not. Second, the draft complaint identified Mr. Jed Wallace as an independent contractor based in Austin, Texas, who was retained by TAG to perform social media services on behalf of Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni in connection with TAG's engagement. Wallace is an independent contractor and he is based in Texas near Austin. He was not, however, retained by TAG for any purpose, and it was false to say so. Okay, well, I can't be bothered to argue about that anymore. It seems very clear from the messages that we saw that you were working with them in some capacity. And given your history and your background and what you say your company does, it's a very reasonable conclusion to make that it was you that was behind a lot of this smearing. On top of the specific statements, the overall gist or sting of the draft complaint was that plaintiffs sexually harassed Lively and retaliated against her in violation of state and federal laws. The gist was and is false. That will be for the courts to decide. Another thing is that with this whole what area you live in, I read another thing that said you had a team in Hawaii. So I just don't know how it works, but you know, this is a global movement going on. This has been a global campaign. Lively went far beyond merely saying, "These are my allegations." Instead, she or her agents communicated them. So now who's using general groups? She or her agents communicated them as standalone facts. Indeed, in the end of the draft complaint, she claimed that she had discovered the full extent of the retaliatory campaign launched by the Wayfarer parties. This is at odds with what she later told a Texas judge, that she needed Wallace's deposition to learn about his involvement in the alleged sexual harassment and purported retaliation. I don't see what the problem is there. Both those things can be true. As I think I've already explained, I feel like you're repeating the same points over and over. She also alleged in the draft complaint that Lively sought to set the record straight, to hold the Wayfarer parties and associates accountable, and to shine a light on this new form of retaliation. Elsewhere, Lively claims that retaliation is about the risk ever revealing the truth, which she claims to be doing in the draft complaint by shining a light and setting the record straight. Lively fully intended this draft complaint a press release dressed as a non-yet fully baked lawsuit to be taken as statement of fact, including about the plaintiffs, and of course she mistakenly thought that by purportedly attaching it to an administrative filing, she would create a privilege against a defamation action such as this. Really? In any event, nothing in the CRD rules require a complaint with such specificity or to attach the incomplete draft complaint, which was totally gratuitous and unnecessary for Library to obtain a right to sue letter. And some of the asserted claims in the draft complaint were not even within the California agency's jurisdiction. My God, this is so picky. This is so picky. On the same day that the CRD complaint with the draft complaint purportedly attached was filed, December 20th, 2024, the Civil Rights Department issued Lively a right to sue letter. Right? So what is your point? I just don't get it. Are you mad that the article came out naming you? Because that really is what the defamation is about. I think we're going to get to in a minute. Like, you're saying you've lost money because of your name being revealed, where that's not defamation. Like, that is what you were doing. You know, you deleted everything. You deleted everything. And you wanted to work in secrecy, and you were working with vulnerable people. So it doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't want to have transparency associated to your name. But, you know, that is not defamation. You're saying that the allegations of being involved in the retaliatory campaign is defamation because it was nothing to sexual harassment, was nothing to do with you because you were over there in Texas and, you know, they were on the set in New York. But you haven't shown that that's not true. You were very much a part of it. That was your purpose for being hired. So why are we now talking about all of this CRD right to sue, blah de blah de blah blah? Oh gosh, this is why court cases take so long, because they bring up all of this stuff. The CRD complaint, the draft complaint, and the right to sue letter were not posted online. There was no public filing of these documents on December 20th, 2024, or at any other time. The only way for a third party to obtain those documents was through a public information request or for the applicant to provide it themselves. Neither plaintiffs nor their representatives provided either the CRD complaint or the draft complaint to the media at any time. It is not plausible that news media became aware of the CRD complaint and the draft complaint through the filing and worked through the public information bureaucracy in time to post the draft complaint within hours of its filing, all at the beginning of a holiday weekend. Someone's been doing their detective work. But again, I don't think this is a strong argument. We know, for example, that one reporter had the complaints by at least 5:48 Pacific time on the filing date. Other media piggybacked off that media's entity reporting, referencing that they got from that entity the draft complaint, which by then was on the media company's website. The false allegations against Wallace and Street made headlines around the world, according to Elle magazine. Elle magazine, you know, they're not exactly CNN, which linked to the draft complaint, as did many other media. This is really tiring. Jed, I'm going to say it one more time. Defamatory comments, okay? She stated what happened. Your name was in the messages. Journalists looked you up and they found, or they might have already known, because it was already out there that you'd been involved in a previous lawsuit involving another celebrity. Okay, he might not be on the level of Blake Lively, but Bam Margera has a lot of fans. And like I said, there's another video out about it, which, you know, I hope you don't find. Because this is the other thing that keeps happening. when people try and stand up for themselves, the defendant, instead of acknowledging and being accountable for what they've done, will go around shutting down their critics and deleting any evidence, you know? But yet you're sitting here moaning about how malicious and deliberate Blake Lively is to you. But you are part of this. You are mixed up in it, whether you like to admit it or not. Despite listing 10 violations of California and federal law and alleging a major social media astroturfing campaign, that was the first time we'd ever heard of it. That was the first time we had a word for what we'd experienced. And your name was behind it as a specialist. So it is in the public interest for all of this information to come out. It really is. Lively later admitted she knew of no facts to support the allegations against Wallace or Street. Lively filed her verified petition for Rule 202 deposition in Hays County, Texas, against Wallace, alleging that Wallace was a subcontractor to a company called TAG, and on information and belief, it was to assist them in their unlawful retaliatory social combat campaign against Lively. The Texas lawsuit conceded that Lively has no facts supporting the allegations she made against Wallace and Street in the draft complaint, but that now, apparently under the threat of sanctions from one of plaintiff's attorneys, she sought to investigate the scope of Mr. Wallace's conduct. Lively's verified Texas lawsuit is replete with judicial admissions that Wallace worked remotely from Dripping Springs, Texas. A substantial part of the events giving rise to the claims that Lively seeks to investigate, specifically Mr. Wallace's work on the social manipulation campaign, occurred in Hays County, Texas, and a substantial part of the underlying events that would give rise to the claims against Wallace being investigated occurred in Hays County, and Mr. Wallace resides in Hays County. It also admits that Lively lacked the critical evidence relevant to petitioners' potential claims, the specifics of the conduct by Mr. Wallace, so that is why she was bringing the Texas lawsuit, for the discrete and specific purpose to investigate the nature and scope of Mr. Wallace's work, the very thing she had already leaked to the press as factual assertions. But I just don't see how you're going to win this. I really don't, because what she has said was not malicious and deliberate. Like she said, she'd been targeted by harassment campaign, and your name was implicated by those messages, which were revealed by people who were in breach of their own contracts, okay? So they seem to back up her claims quite well. And now she's saying, okay, well, further now, like we're several months down the line, and she's finding out that, you know, what the details of your work engagement was. She's having to refile certain documents or whatever to get the information that she needs. It doesn't mean that you're not part of it. I don't know if I'm being really ignorant, but that's what I feel is happening here. But I think this has a lot more to do with legal processes than it does with saying that Blake Lively was wrong for putting you together with all of these people when it was so obvious from reading the messages and her complaint that you'd been brought in to help them with their mitigation crisis campaign, to help save the movie. And also, let's not forget about Justin bringing up, I think I've already mentioned that he brought up the examples on Twitter where they'd already done it to another girl, another celebrity, you know, so you know exactly what that was going to be like. That is sexual harassment. It's a form of misogyny. Maybe you don't know because you're a man, but I'm telling you, I don't know how the judge is going to see it, but you know, this is what the civil rights movement is meant to be about. On top of admitting that she did not have the factual and evidentiary basis for claims against plaintiffs, Lively knew that her timeline did not add up. Lively is very clear that she believes plaintiffs were hired no earlier than August 8th. They were actually approached on August 7th, but did not begin work until the 9th. Well, that's probably because she was going by the messages, you know. But her own draft complaint shows negative sentiment towards her building in July. This fact alone should have put Lively on notice that her accusations were false, or at the least she was negligent for not inquiring. And it makes sense that she would lack that evidentiary and factual basis, that she would lack the critical evidence and the specifics of the conduct by Mr. Wallace. Lively knew that plaintiffs had not harassed her, and she had no evidence that they retaliated or were guilty of any of her other claims. I don't see it. I do not see it. Again, in the draft complaint, Lively paints a nefarious picture that Wallace, as an employee of Street, participated in an astroturfing campaign that published false and negative statements about her, or boosted comments that did so. But that's not what Wallace did. Here we go. Wallace's job was to read, analyse and assess all forms of media and trends taking place with respect to various issues. Wallace did this limited role as an employee of Street, and all these tasks were performed in Texas. This job was in line with Wallace's work generally with respect to all forms of media, specifically for the events related to Mr. Baldoni. Wallace's limited job was to conduct analysis of all forms of media, analyse the sentiment of the coverage, and then provide updates on the observations. After passively observing the social media environment, Wallace saw an organic outpouring of support for Baldoni and the film. Wallace's feeling, based on what he saw, was that no remedial actions needed to be taken at that time, and that everyone should let the sentiment on social media unfold organically. In addition to observing that people on social media organically supported Mr. Baldoni, there appeared to be dislike for Miss Lively based on her tone-deaf promotion of the film. Well, I've already told you, some of us think Mr. Baldoni is tone-deaf. Therefore, Wallace's advice was not to do anything at that time and let the sentiment on social media continue to unfold organically. This is what you allege, Jed, but I'm telling you, none of us are buying this, because this is actually what was being said in the messages between Melissa and Jennifer. They actually couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe how much misogyny, hatred towards another women from women was being expressed, even though there's articles literally saying that it's a well-known publicity technique, because everyone knows it's a very quick way, a very easy way to stir up engagement, is to start a hate train on a woman. So yeah, I just don't get what you were being paid $1 million for if all you did was sat there and went, I've analysed all the content and I can tell you don't need to do anything. Why were you being sent posts? Why were you crushing it on Reddit? You've not addressed any of that here. Because that role was strictly passive, again, if it was strictly passive, what were you crushing? Both the specific assertions in the draft complaint as well as its general thrust are just and false. Plaintiffs never published directly or indirectly any information or content, negative or otherwise, regarding Lively. Plaintiffs never seeded or promoted content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums about It Ends With Us, Wayfarer, Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, or any of Lively or Reynolds' businesses or family. Plaintiffs have never asked or directed anyone to post about, comment on, or like any social media posts about It Ends With Us, Wayfarer, Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, or any of Lively's or Reynolds' businesses or family. That makes each of the specific statements made in the draft complaint untrue, and taken together, Lively's gist or thrust of her draft complaint were untrue. The statements of fact, actual or implied of and concerning plaintiffs in the draft complaint are false, defamatory, made with either negligence or actual malice, and have caused millions of dollars in reputational harm, including both general and special damages through emotional harm, actual damages, and real and projected loss of business. Wallace and Street is an amount that exceeds $1 million. $1 million for analysing social media trends. As for the emotional harm, please don't get me started. Please do not get me started. What emotional harm have you experienced? Seriously, what emotional harm have you experienced? You had your name in an article. Like, as I've already said, if you want someone to feel bad for your employers. They were the ones. They were the ones that exposed you in their messages. Specifically, Wallace and Street's business model primarily relies on anonymity. But why? Why does it rely on anonymity if you're so above board, if you're such a good person helping people and analysing social media trends? I don't understand why you need to be anonymous for that. Not to post negative social media or to weaponize a digital army for untraceable digital social manipulation campaign, as Lively alleges. So, who were they talking about then when they said, and most importantly, untraceable? That's all we want to know. That's all we want to know. Oh, here we go again. But to help ordinary people, and some famous, to receive treatment from a variety of attacks, some physical attacks. Wow. I wonder who that was from. And who are these people that you're talking about? In addition, plaintiffs help some people and their families with their addictions by providing health plans and support. Well, you weren't very helpful to Bam Margera with his addiction. You don't have any qualifications. You didn't prove that you had a university degree in that lawsuit anyway, where he contested your qualifications, because you said that you actually did leave college, which is what he said, and you thought you'd completed the coursework at another location or something like that, but you did. All you needed to do was show your what do you get, a certificate, or when you finish that level of education? Like, I think it's pretty standard to be able to just show. You don't need to give an explanation of your family being ill as an excuse, so that was like a red flag. And I'm pretty sure that you've wiped everything since that situation, because the only reason I know about that is because it was reported on back then. And as far as I can see from that one, what Bam Margera alleged about you wasn't proven wrong. Like, I don't know. I know that lawsuit was settled as well. I know Bam Margera is not always honest at all. He's not reliable. But on that particular point, I think he was correct. I don't think you actually showed proof that you had a degree. And I don't think you're showing proof that Blake Lively has defamed you and that you're worth all of this money if all you do is social media analysis. And you need anonymity for that. And then it's all a malicious campaign to hurt poor little Jeddy boy. Yeah, and also, as I said, you say you're helping families with their addictions by providing health plans and support. Well, what you're doing as well is you're trying to cover up people's addictions. When I say people, I mean celebrities that are worth money to other celebrities. And you also help people that profit off people that have addictions, which means you profit off people that have addictions. So you're in a addiction treatment industry, which is pretty murky. It's a pretty murky place to be. But, here you are complaining about all of these things that have happened that are so unfair and have emotionally damaged you. The false allegations of fact made with actual malice has meant that Wallace and Street have lost business. I mean, to be honest with you, you could have used this as a campaign to bolster your business, because it's like, we were behind the Blake Lively takedown. Look how well we did. Sorry, is that not funny? I don't get why it's defamatory. You were hired to do mitigation, and that's what it said you did in the article. It said that you were behind astroturfing, and now you're saying that's not true and that you just do analysis, but you've lost $1 million. Like, something's just not adding up. The maths is not mathing. The maths is not mathing. Worse than the economic toll is the assault on Wallace's emotional condition. Lively has blasted out in court filings in this case confidential health information about Wallace, despite this information being sealed in the New York case and in a redacted declaration and in letters marked confidential. Wallace has suffered medical issues induced by Lively's actions. Wallace's stress began on December 20th, 2024, when plaintiff's world was turned upside down from the maliciously leaked CRD complaint and the draft complaint, which made totally false and fabricated allegations against plaintiffs. Such physical manifestations are the strongest evidence of mental anguish damages. I'm pretty sure it was in your motion to dismiss that you had suffered a medical emergency when the attorneys or whoever it is that does that tried to deliver the what do they call when they came to your house and they tried to serve the documents, you wouldn't answer the door, you wouldn't answer phone calls. So the question is, why did you not receive those documents? Like, if you have done nothing wrong, and if you're just an innocent party that's been innocently dragged into this, and it's all a big mistake, why would you be so stressed about being served documents? Like, you've just made too many excuses. And I'm sure that you were on the original, you were included in the original suit filed at Blake Lively. I'm sure you was mentioned in it. I just have a feeling I'm going to have to check that, but I just don't buy all this stuff that you're a victim. You are playing the victim too much. And, you know, you've seen with your own eyes what Lively has had to put up with, but you're just thinking that what you go through emotionally is anything comparable to what she must have felt like. Like, please. It just doesn't even come into it. There's so little being said about you. There's a few articles, yeah, but we've all looked for background information on you. There's nothing out there. So why stress? Why are you stressed? Why are you stressed if you've got nothing to hide? That's what I want to know. I mean, I admit it can be stressful when suddenly your name's online, but not to the point where you become physically ill as you have to have hospital treatment. And there are other factors that could be involved in that anyway, like especially when it's like, I believe it was something to do with your heart. So there can be a lot of other factors. I think you're just using that just to make your case look stronger. But, you know, like I said, I'm sure the judge will get to the bottom of all of this. As long as he's not best friends with Babcock or they've got some special arrangement. This factual statements section incorporates all of the factual allegations in the introduction section of this amended complaint. See, I don't understand what this availed herself of the forum by filing the Texas lawsuit where she sought to obtain evidence to defend this claim of defamation. Lively either knew that her defamatory claims were untrue, that plaintiff sexually harassed her, or had no evidence of the other claims, although she told the Texas judge she did not know the circumstances of Wallace's involvement. But she doesn't. How is that not true? She just knows that you're involved. Your name's right in the thick of it. I've said it. I keep saying the same thing, like, and you keep saying the same thing. So. The defamation claims here have a nexus to the Texas lawsuit because its filing and dismissal will demonstrate in part the fault element of the claim, that is negligent and actual malice for punitive damages. The Texas lawsuit dismissal demonstrates a purposeful avoidance of the truth, which has been, in appropriate cases, held to be evidence of actual malice and certainly negligence. The Texas lawsuit also relates to the truth of a falsity of the defamatory allegations because Lively admits that she has no evidence that they are true. I think that's why she needs the discovery. How is she meant to know if you've deleted everything? This is the bit I really don't get, because they've tried to say that she made these statements while she was in Texas. Like, this is where it's really getting flimsy to me. In addition, Lively frequently visits Texas and did so in connection with promotion of the film, including at the Texas Book Bonanza, where she appeared with the Texas author of the book the film was based on, Colleen Hoover, and her other co-star. Besides Baldoni, Brandon Sklenar. A news report of the appearance contained the following. And then they've got a article from the Daily Mail. You know, there's no better source of integrity and accuracy than the good old Daily Mail, which describes her outfit, that she was wearing that she was flashing a glimpse of a satin bralette top and slipped into a pair of open-toed, glittering silver pumps, and she had her toned legs on display. She was wearing a little black mini dress, a fitted. The actress showed off her toned legs wearing a fitted black mini dress that contained colourful floral details embroidered into the fabric, as well as sheer black sleeves. Oh yeah, that was another thing she got lambasted for, promoting florals instead of focusing on violence in relationships at promotional events, which she was apparently told to do by the marketing department. During the appearance, she spoke to hundreds of people, as depicted here. Also, during Lively's multi-day appearances in Texas, she promoted the film. Discovery will reveal whether she made any additional defamatory remarks about plaintiffs during these appearances. She did, however, attempt to leverage her brand of sparkling drinks, Betty Buzz, with an ad campaign. It ends with Buzz, playing off the film. Her take line for the drink was, "Every person with a mouth should drink this drink," and published a map with 43 locations between Waco and Austin where Betty Buzz could be purchased. Lively purposely availed herself of the Texas Forum by suing Wallace there. Her defamatory accusations were directed at their conduct in Texas, and all of the damage suffered by plaintiffs occurred in Texas. Furthermore, on information and belief, additional defamatory statements about plaintiffs were made by Lively at SXSW in Austin, Texas, and later in Waco, and these form the basis in part of this suit. See, this is where I'm like really confused because, first of all, like, I thought you said she made the defamatory comments in the New York Times article, which was blasted around the world. I just don't buy that she was promoting the film and making defamatory remarks at the same time. Like, it wouldn't make any sense. She's a good businesswoman. If anything, she is a good businesswoman. She knows what she's doing. Why would she do that? Why would she do any of this stuff anyway? She knows it's going to affect her reputation. Do you know what I mean? She's been doing this a long time. She's not coming from a position of being downtrodden. She's in a strong position, so it's not in her interest to be making stuff up and causing a big scene about something if it didn't really happen. That is just my take on it. As for the Betty Buzz, like, the story I heard was that she was promoting alcohol, and Betty Buzz is a soft drink, a soft sparkling drink. Again, I don't see what that has to do with the defamation. And like, I'm just going to round it off because this has gone on way too long. But you're accusing her of maliciously lying and accusing you of being part of the sexual harassment and retaliatory campaign. But yet here you are accusing her of making defamatory remarks in Texas. But you want to go to Discovery to find out if that's true or not. Like, I don't see what the difference is. I really don't. But we'll just get to the end, which is basically your argument is that you're just a regular person, even though you're suing for $7 million. That's $1 million for emotional damage. Oh, sorry. Let me read it out. Although Lively is a public figure, Wallace and Street are not. Thus, plaintiffs need prove only negligence to establish liability. However, plaintiffs also seek punitive damages in an amount not less than $6 million. And to satisfy the evidentiary burden in establishing the right to such damages, they must demonstrate actual malice, that Lively either knew the allegations were false at the time she made them, or she acted in reckless disregard of the truth. That is, she had a high degree of awareness of falsity and in fact entertained serious doubt about their truth. She acted with actual malice because she was the one claiming to have been harassed and retaliated against. She was the one who claimed she had a contract with plaintiffs, and yet there is no such contract, and plaintiffs were nowhere near where the alleged harassment retaliation took place. Lively knew this, and it is not the case that she was harassed by some masked stranger who turned out to be the plaintiffs. She knew and knows they were not the harassed retaliators, but made these allegations anyway. She doesn't. How does she know that? Lead them to the press, hoping they would be widely republished, which they were, but then excluded plaintiffs from the real complaint, knowing that they had nothing to do with the events depicted herein. When she had the opportunity to learn the true facts through her Texas lawsuit, she intentionally turned away and dismissed the litigation. The defamatory statements are per se because they accuse plaintiffs of conduct which is criminal. In addition, the defamatory statements injure plaintiffs in their office, profession, or occupation and are thus per se, that is, damages are presumed and plaintiffs are entitled at least to nominal damages, and the damage case may get to the jury without any proof of damage. All of the statements of fact from the previous sections are incorporated in this section by reference. Sadly for plaintiffs, they find themselves in the middle of this coast-to-coast glamorous Hollywood litigation between two of America's leading film stars regarding events which plaintiffs had nothing to do with. We've already explained several times that that's not true. Purportedly occurring during filming of the movie It Ends With Us, and thereafter it's marketing. The problem for defendant, of course, is that Wallace has never met Lively and certainly has never harassed her. You certainly do not need to meet someone to harass them online. Everyone knows that. Was never on the set of the film where the sexual harassment apparently occurred and could not have investigated, prevented, or remedied the claimed harassment if it occurred, because for one reason he had no knowledge of it and still doesn't. He certainly had no power to remedy it, as he was not and has never been her or Baldoni, who he's also never met, employer, and did not retaliate against Lively for claiming he, Wallace, or anyone else sexually harassed her. Neither he or nor Street ever contracted with her. Plaintiffs therefore respectfully request that this court enter a final judgment and award damages for 1. Wallace's loss of reputation and emotional distress in the amount of at least $1 million. And punitive damages in an amount of at least $6 million. Where do they get these figures from? And Street's loss of reputation in an amount not less than $1 million, and punitive damages in the amount of at least $6 million. Court costs and for such further relief at law or in equity as to which plaintiffs may be entitled. And that is finally the end. One thing I want to check out on is the dismissing of the previous lawsuit, because I'm not sure what he's talking about there, but I'm sure that has more to do with a technical issue than she's dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice. So I'm going to look into that. That is all I have got for today. We'll see what happens, but I think it's fairly obvious that Jed Wallace was very much part of this online campaign that was instigated by Wayfarer Productions, whether he wants to call it Wayfarer Productions or Wayfarer Team or Tag or whatever. Something's gone on. Jed was part of it. He was employed for that purpose. He's saying that it's caused him emotional and financial distress. We need to see the receipts on all of this. But yeah, that's about all I've got for today. Thanks for joining. See you on the next one.